Breaking news from Capitol Hill. There are new documents. They come from House Democrats showing former President Donald Trump received nearly $8 million from 20 different foreign governments while he was in office.
A bombshell new report from congressional Democrats reveals that Donald Trump received nearly $8 million from various foreign powers, including China and Saudi Arabia, during his time as president. A probable violation of the Constitution's sacred emoluments clause and a blatant act of corruption. The report also reveals that House Republicans effectively killed an investigation into all of that when they took the majority in 2023 to make room for their baseless and relentless probes against President Biden for the very sort of misdeeds that Donald Trump appears to be actually guilty of. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. All right, folks, we got a couple of clips to look at, various articles and tweets to look at as well. All I'll say is that when it comes to the Republican Party, this should be your mantra. Every accusation is a confession. This party and its elected officials and its leaders deserve zero charitability and zero benefit of the doubt, as this clip will prove.
Breaking news from Capitol Hill. There are new documents. They come from House Democrats showing former President Donald Trump received nearly $8 million from 20 different foreign governments while he was in office. I want to bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles. What more can you tell us, Ryan?
Well, Chris, I just left a briefing from Democrats on the House Oversight Committee where they gave us this report. It's a 156-page exhaustive report that details only 2 years of the Donald Trump presidency, which they outline millions of dollars in payments that flowed directly from foreign governments into the various businesses that were controlled by Donald Trump and his associates. And now it's important to keep in mind that while Donald Trump was president, he did not do what other previous presidents have done and either divested his business assets outside of government or stepped down from the boards and stepped down from positions of authority in these businesses. Instead, he chose to remain involved in them. And even though his children did run these businesses, he was still directly involved or had knowledge of the day-to-day business activity that many of these different associated entities were doing while he was in office. And what this report outlines with a great deal of specificity are the types of payments that many of these foreign governments were making to his various businesses. And the number one country that over this 2-year period had participated or had patronized Trump-associated businesses was China, which, of course, Donald Trump has been a fierce critic of China, particularly China as it relates to Hunter Biden, the current president's son, and the impeachment investigation that is underway by oversight Republicans. And Saudi Arabia was another one of the countries of which had spent close to $1 million in patronizing Trump-associated businesses during this 2-year period that the Oversight Committee was able to gain records to. Now, that 2-year period, Chris, is also an important part of this conversation. They were only able to collect that 2-year period worth of time because the accounting firm that was working with Donald Trump at that time, during that window of time, separated from him and no longer was willing to do business with him. They felt compelled to hand the information over because they were requested to do so by Congress. The rest of that period of time, House Republicans have not joined with House Democrats in compelling that information to be brought forward.
And the clip goes on, but there you have it, folks. I mean, again, every accusation is a confession. I'm going to read a couple of tweets from the House Oversight Committee Democrats and their Twitter page. So Jamie Raskin and Oversight Democrats released a report showing Donald Trump pocketed at least $7.8 million from 20 foreign states while in office, violating the Constitution and selling out U.S. foreign policy. The limited records obtained by Oversight Dems for just 4 of the 500-plus businesses Trump owned while he was president revealed they collected payments from these foreign governments. It goes from China, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, UAE, Latvia, Thailand, Kazakhstan, and the Philippines, et cetera, and so forth. In January 2023, Republicans took over the House, and the new Oversight Committee chairman, James Comer, quickly agreed with Trump's lawyers to bury further evidence, blocking Oversight Dems from discovering additional documents. Comer prevented Oversight Democrats from finding out how many more foreign governments made unconstitutional payments to Donald Trump, including payments from Azerbaijan, Russia, South Korea, Costa Rica, and Brazil, and others as well. While these findings are shocking, as a result of Chairman Comer's collusion with Trump's attorneys, we don't yet know the full extent of the foreign payments that Trump received, or even the total number of countries that paid his businesses while he was president. Donald Trump trampled the Constitution, cashed in on the presidency, and sold out the American people to at least 20 foreign powers, and the GOP helped him conceal the evidence. Again, every accusation is a confession. Think of all the recent videos that we've been doing covering the GOP's relentless and baseless pursuit of President Biden and the impeachment probe, the impeachment inquiry, right? This is the very sort of misconduct that they are apparently targeting in Biden, but it's actually Trump who's guilty of it. It's not the Biden crime family, it's the Trump crime family. Additional statement from Jamie Raskin. By elevating his personal financial interests and the policy priorities of corrupt foreign powers over the American public interest, Donald Trump violated both the clear commands of the Constitution, which would be the Sacred Emoluments Clause, and the careful precedent set and observed by every previous commander-in-chief. Some additional things here. Somebody pointed out on Twitter, the founders thought the danger of a corrupt president was so serious they forbid it in the Constitution 3 times. Bribery is the only named impeachable offense besides treason. All others are high crimes and misdemeanors. And there are 2 emoluments clauses, foreign and domestic. Emoluments clauses being that no government leader, particularly the most important and powerful leader, the president, the one who's most intimately involved in foreign policy, should be in a position to receive gifts, favors, payments, any sort of remuneration or compensation from foreign leaders, because that could incentivize somebody to corruptly change U.S. foreign policy, a bribe. Again, and every accusation is confession. That's the sort of misconduct that they're accusing baselessly President Biden of. Now, in response to this, Eric Trump, Donald Trump's son, says, "What a joke. All foreign government profits," note that key word, "for stays at our hotels and other properties while my father was in office were voluntarily donated to the U.S. Treasury. Just another example of MSNBC counter-narrative for the most corrupt family in political history, the Bidens." You should probably drop the apostrophe there. Except there's really actually no evidence for that. At the time, Trump's lawyer said the former president planned to donate foreign profits, for again, that key word, profits, we'll come back to that, from his hotels to the U.S. Treasury Department. However, the amount reportedly donated by the Trump Organization in 2017 and 2018, and Donald Trump was president for 4 years, so there should be 2019 and 2020, falls well short of estimated foreign payments that were made to its properties. Trump refused to divest himself of corporate assets and properties prior to taking office, which again, blatant act of corruption on Trump's part. And that was within his first few days as president, meaning he could still profit from his various businesses with little transparency. And then besides that, Raw Story is reporting, House Republicans have spent the past year trying to dig up dirt on Biden, particularly relating to China. Trump's campaign and Rudy Giuliani did the same thing in 2019. Part of his efforts were in pressuring Ukraine officials to announce investigation into the Bidens. Thus far, the younger Trump, Eric, hasn't shown any evidence showing the millions in profits were transferred to the government. As Ron Filipowski points out from Midas Touch, he says, well, I'm sure James Comer can bring Eric Trump in for deposition so he can go under oath on this, which is, again, the very sort of thing they wanted to do to Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. Well, if you want to depose a president's son because you think that president and his son may have acted corruptly and abused the powers of the office, well, it sounds like you should be doing that for Donald Trump and his son as well. But of course, Republicans have absolutely no interest in that because they're unprincipled hypocrites. Now, I'm going to read some certain segments from the actual report itself released by congressional Democrats. Several months into Trump's term, the Trump organization issued a pamphlet describing its, quote, voluntary directive to donate all profits, again, that key word, from foreign governments, patronage at our hotels and similar businesses during Trump's presidential term to the U.S. Treasury. This policy, however, clearly failed to comply with the Constitution, which imposes a total ban on the receipt of any revenue from foreign governments, not just profits, absent congressional approval. Because it was limited to profits and did not extend to revenues generally, this policy was insufficient on its face, and that's assuming they complied with. That's assuming they did turn over all the profits. It still violated the Foreign Emoluments Clause. There's another segment here. This goes back into a bit of the history, but In April 2017, the Republican-led committee sent a bipartisan letter to the Trump Organization requesting documents and information about its processes for identifying payments from foreign governments and entities they control. The letter noted that a Trump Organization spokesman on March 17th announced the company had developed a policy to identify foreign government customers and donate profits, but expressed concern that details of the plan to donate profits derived from foreign government payments, however, are still unclear. The bipartisan letter requested documents and a meeting with Trump Organization officials to determine how then-President Trump intended to comply with the Constitution's prohibition on foreign emoluments. In its letter enclosing the pamphlet, the Trump Organization stated that for several of the committee's specific document requests, including among others, the committee's request for documents regarding public reporting on donations to the U.S. Treasury made by the Trump Organization, whether donations would be claimed by the Trump Organization or by Donald Trump as tax deductions, and the specific entities within the Trump Organization that would be donating profits, they said, "We believe it's premature to respond at this time insofar as total determinations regarding these matters are dependent on many factors that will not be known to the Trump Organization until after the close of the year," meaning they stonewalled. And then again, when Democrats were looking into this quietly and perhaps irresponsibly quietly, maybe in a different world, the right thing to do would have been to quietly probe these things. But in the world that Republicans have been created, Democrats made a mistake. They should have been on MSNBC, CNN, and every other outlet talking to the public about this, because that's what Republicans do with respect to the probes into President Biden, right? But Democrats, for whatever reason, decided to behave responsibly and quietly. And then when House Republicans took over Congress, they killed the investigation and told the various subpoenaed parties just to not comply with the subpoena. Folks, this is the world we live in. The Republicans grade other Republicans and the Trump family, the Trump crime family, on a curve. They don't care. They have no interest in Donald Trump's blatant corruption, which is infinitely greater and much more intricate than any probable corruption associated with the Biden family. They have no interest in that. They have no interest in Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, who worked in the White House, unlike Hunter Biden, a guy who was in government and therefore deserves 10,000 times the scrutiny of a private citizen like Hunter Biden. They have no interest in his corrupt misdeeds. They have no interest in the fact that even though he was Donald Trump's basically shadow Secretary of State to Saudi Arabia, and then days after he left the White House when Trump's term ended, received a $2 billion investment from Saudi Arabia, they don't care about that. They don't care. And that's why I say this. It's very likely that Democrats will retake the House in November, if nothing else. I think they should do to Donald Trump and his family, assuming that Trump wins the election, God forbid, they should do, the second Trump is sworn in, what Republicans have tried to do to Biden, which is they need to open probe after probe after probe after probe after probe and subpoena and demand depositions and just make a circus of this, because Lord knows there's actually infinitely more substance to this than what's going on with the Biden probe. The only thing that Republicans understand is fighting fire with fire. They understand power. They leverage power to the best of their ability. Respecting norms, traditions, single standards. They have no interest in that whatsoever. So the only way to really teach them a lesson and to hold Donald Trump, who is infinitely more corrupt than Joe Biden, accountable for his misdeeds, is to do to him what Republicans are trying to do to President Biden. Let me know what you think in the comments.